My brother's kid got drunk at a family meet and told everyone I was just the sad uncle who buys love. The crowd laughed, even his mom. I said nothing. The next day, I canceled his rent payment, his car insurance, and his phone line, all in my name. By Monday, he was couch surfing, phoneless, and begging. Then I shocked everyone with what I did next. It was the kind of evening after which everything changes, even if no one realizes it in the moment. The last night Cody got to feel untouchable. I'd been dreading it all day. Another family dinner at my brother's house. Cheap wine, bad food, fake smiles. I went anyway because I always did. That's who I was in the family. The dependable one. The one who helped with bills when they were behind. The one who paid for Cody's phone, car insurance, and his first apartment just so he could say he was on his own. I pulled up already in a foul mood. Not because of anything specific, but because I knew how it would go. I'd make conversation no one really listened to. I'd bring a good bottle of wine and watch them treat it like boxed red. I'd listen to my brother talk about how hard it was raising a teenager and his wife make subtle comments about how some people don't understand what real responsibility looks like. They never said it directly, but it was always there. That I had money but no family. That I was the uncle with time and cash to spare. And maybe that made me less than them. Cody was already drinking when I arrived. 18. But no one cared. He'd always been allowed to do whatever he wanted. They called it trusting him. I called it enabling. Dinner was as lifeless as I expected. The lasagna was dry. The conversation even worse. Cody got louder with each glass, telling stories that didn't have endings and laughing at his own jokes. Nobody stopped him. Nobody ever had. Then came the moment he raised his glass and said it like he was delivering some grand truth. Like he was doing everyone a favor by finally putting it out there. To Uncle Arie, the sad uncle who buys love. It didn't even sting right away. What hit first was the silence before the laughter. Like they were all waiting to see if it was okay to laugh. Then they did. All of them. My brother, his wife, even my own sister, shaking her head like it was all in good fun. I didn't say anything. I just sat there staring into my plate. But inside, I was done with all of it. I drove home feeling like a fool. For the money I'd spent, the birthdays I'd shown up for, the emergencies I had covered. It wasn't generosity anymore. It was a joke. I was a joke. By the time I parked in my driveway, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Cody's phone canceled. Insurance gone. Rent, not another cent. Let his friends drive him around now. Let him sleep on someone else's couch. Let him feel what life's like when you burn the one bridge that actually mattered. He tried reaching out on Sunday, someone else's phone. No apology, just a "can we talk?" I didn't answer. Monday morning, my brother called, and that's when it really started because he didn't call to fix anything. He called to remind me of my place. That's when the fuse finally burned down. The call came Monday morning just like I expected. What I didn't expect was how fast my brother dropped the mask. No hesitation. No warm-up. Just straight into it like a manager addressing an employee who missed the shift. "So, you really can lead everything?" He didn't even say Cody's name. Just everything like I'd shut off the heat in the middle of winter instead of cutting a grown man loose. I told him yes calmly. No drama, no explanation, just yes. He let out a sigh. This dramatic, annoyed sound like I had created the mess. He said, "Jesus, Arie, don't you think you're being a little petty?" I didn't answer. I wasn't going to justify it. Then he said something that finally peeled back everything polite between us. "You act like you're some kind of martyr because you throw money around like it makes you better than the rest of us. But at the end of the day, you're still the guy who spends Christmas alone. So don't pretend helping out makes you some kind of hero. You've just been buying your way into this family since the day Cody was born." I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit there. I'd spent the last decade covering for him. He lost his job in 2017. I covered his mortgage for 4 months. When Cody needed braces, I chipped in half. When they wanted to surprise Cody with a car for his 17th birthday, guess who was asked to? Just co-sign. Nothing major. All that time I thought I was helping. Turns out they thought I was trying to buy relevance. I told him I was done. He said, "Done with what?" I said, with acting like this is normal. Then I reminded him of the rental house, a 2-unit property upstate we bought together 10 years ago. A small inheritance from our mother had gone into it. I put up most of the money, but it was supposed to be a joint thing. He'd handle maintenance. I'd handle the books. And for years, he'd quietly pocketed half the rental income like clockwork. I told him I was taking full ownership. I had a lawyer draw up paperwork over the weekend. Buyout offer, notarized, fair price. I told him he could sign or contest it, but either way, it was happening. I wasn't going to keep funding people who turned me into a punchline at dinner. He laughed like it was a bluff. You're really going to cut your own brother out of the only decent investment he has? Yes. His voice dropped. I could hear the shift from arrogance to panic. But before he could finish whatever excuse was coming next, his wife got on the phone. She didn't ease into it either. Just jumped straight into a monologue like she'd been rehearsing it for years. She said I was cruel, that I was embarrassing a teenager who looked up to me, that no one in the family ever said I had to give money, and that if I chose to, then it was on me, that I was doing all this not because of what Cody said, but because I was lonely and bitter and couldn't stand seeing a family that actually loved each other. She kept going. She said I was vindictive, that I had no kids of my own, so I was trying to play parent when it suited me and pull out when it didn't. That if I walked away from them, I'd eventually have no one. I listened to every word. Then I said, "You're right. I won't have anyone, but at least I won't be lied to, used, and laughed at by the people I kept afloat." And I hung up. The next day, Cody was officially moved out of his apartment. I'd given the landlord notice. No screaming, no drama, just quiet paperwork. By Friday, he was living back with his parents in the room he grew up in. No car, no phone, no rent money, just a mattress, a second-hand laptop, and a pair of parents who were now suddenly looking at their lives and realizing how many strings I'd been holding up without them noticing. But this wasn't over yet. The real unraveling hadn't even started. By the end of the week, the silence from my brother's house said more than any phone call. I knew they were scrambling. Cody was back under their roof. And from what I heard through the grapevine, mostly my sister, who was still pretending to be neutral, he wasn't handling it well. Apparently, he'd been bragging just 2 weeks ago that he'd never live with his parents again. Independence, adulthood, freedom. Now, he was sharing a wall with their laundry room, getting side-eyed every time he opened the fridge. I didn't feel bad, not even a little. What I didn't expect was how fast the next domino fell. Saturday morning, I got a call from the property manager of our upstate rental, the one I was taking full control of. She said my brother had called her directly, tried to convince her not to make any changes, told her he was still co-owner, and that she needed to ignore anything I sent over until he sorted things out legally. So, I sent him a message, just one sentence. Any further interference and I'll initiate a formal legal dispute. He didn't respond. That afternoon, his wife called this time. She wasn't yelling. She was calm, calculated. She said, "Look, Arie, I think we all got a little carried away. Let's not burn the whole bridge over a joke." A joke. That word again. I asked her if she understood what I was actually doing. That this wasn't about a joke. It was about the fact that they never once took responsibility for any of it. That I had carried more of their load than they ever admitted. And the first time I said no, they acted like I declared war. She said, "He's your nephew, Arie. Don't you want to see him succeed?" I said, "Not if I'm the only reason he ever will." That's when she started to cry. Real or not, I didn't care. The money from the property meant something different to them than it did to me. To me, it was passive income, a long-term play. But to them, it had become a lifeline. They had budgeted around it, planned vacations with it, covered unexpected expenses with it, and now it was going away. Monday morning, my lawyer sent the final paperwork. Bayou complete, name transfer filed, a full separation, no more shared investments, no more shared anything. I expected more resistance, threats, accusations, maybe even another attempt at guilt, but they went quiet. For a few days, it almost felt like peace. Then my sister sent me a message. It was a screenshot, a group text between Cody and a few of his friends. One of them had written, "Damn, you really living with your parents again?" Another said, Bro went from solo pad to sharing a bathroom with his mom, Lomeo. Cody didn't respond. I stared at that screenshot for a while, not because I felt bad for him, but because I knew this was only the beginning. That kid was going to learn what the rest of the world already knew. You don't mock the hand that's feeding you, especially when the hand finally closes. And by the time it all settled, they'd be left with nothing but each other, which for once was exactly what they deserved. By the second week, it became clear just how tightly everything had been held together with tape. My brother had always moved like a man who thought he was solid. Like things would always fall into place eventually because they always had. Because someone, usually me, would make sure they did. But without that safety net, reality started peeling back in layers. I went to my niece's birthday party. Not because I wanted to, but because my sister begged me to come, said it would mean a lot. I didn't expect my brother to say anything. I didn't expect Cody to show his face. But both of them were there. Cody barely looked at anyone. He was quieter than I'd ever seen him. Not humbled exactly, just stalled out, like someone who'd run out of clever lines and didn't know how to be a real person. He stood by the drink cooler, scrolling through a scratched-up prepaid phone, one of the burner ones you buy in a gas station. I almost laughed. This was the same kid who used to complain about not getting the newest iPhone every September. His friends didn't come. Not one of them. Word had gotten around that he was back at home. And in that age group, that's social death. They made fun of him in private group chats and voice memos. I didn't need to see it. I already knew. What caught my attention more than anything was the way my brother and his wife acted toward each other. There was a coldness there I hadn't seen before. She stayed on the opposite side of the yard from him most of the time. When he did approach her to ask something where the napkins were, if she'd seen their younger kids' shoes, she answered without looking at him. Like someone clocking out early from a job they no longer cared about. The fake smiles were gone. All that tight performative family cheer they used to put on in front of guests, gone. You could feel the weight in that backyard. It was the sound of things unraveling quietly behind smiles that didn't stretch far enough anymore. I got home that night to a message from my brother. 2 words, you win. I stared at it for a while. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a late admission, like he finally realized this wasn't about a joke or a teenager being dumb. This was about years of dependency dressed up as kinship. Years of being told I was part of the family as long as I was funding it. A few hours later, he followed up with something longer. We can't keep up with the mortgage without the rental income. You knew that. I didn't reply because no, I didn't know that. I didn't know they were that deep. I didn't know that one rental property, one check every month was the difference between survival and panic. And frankly, it wasn't my problem anymore. My sister called me the next day. She told me my brother's wife was furious all the time now. That the tension in the house was thick enough to cut. That Cody's situation was making it worse. Apparently, he tried applying for jobs, but couldn't even get a call back from the local sandwich shop. No car, no degree, no real work history, and a reputation for being lazy. He wasn't exactly a hot prospect. He started sleeping in, staying up all night, getting into fights with his mom over chores. At one point, he tried blaming her for everything. She threw a mug, didn't hit him, but it shattered and she didn't clean it up. This was the house now. Silence, blame, broken glass. Cody had gone from being the smug kid with the apartment and the car and the Instagram lifestyle to just another adult child in his parents' house, hiding behind a closed door. And they couldn't say anything to me anymore because I hadn't cut them off. They burned the bridge with both hands. I thought they'd stay quiet after the mortgage text. I figured they'd sulk, maybe cut me off socially, let pride keep them in check. But a week later, I got blindsided in the most pathetic way possible. I got served not by a lawyer, by Cody. He showed up to my front door in a hoodie and sunglasses, holding a manila envelope. I hadn't seen him in person since the dinner. He looked thinner, or maybe just deflated, like someone who had lost something invisible. He handed it to me without saying a word. Inside a typed letter, not legal, not official, just a print out of a message he'd written, for pages long. It was titled A Formal Request for Support. No joke. He'd outlined in dead serious language how I had knowingly placed him in emotional and financial distress by abruptly severing support systems which had become foundational to his stability. He mentioned developmental damage, abandonment by a paternal figure, and said that if I didn't resume financial assistance, he'd have no choice but to pursue other avenues. At first, I thought it was a prank or a poorly executed legal threat. Then I flipped the last page. It had my brother's name on it, too. They'd both signed it. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Genuine disbelief. They were trying to turn this into some kind of moral trial. Like I owed them a defense. Like being the only one who ever wrote checks meant I was now legally required to keep doing it. I didn't respond, but I did do something else. That week, I made a quiet call to the HO board where my brother lived. I'd helped one of their members out a few years back, loan during a tough divorce. He remembered. I asked if the house was technically in good standing. Turns out it wasn't. They were behind on dues. Not massively, but enough to trigger warning letters. The next board meeting, I attended quietly. I didn't speak, just sat in the back and listened while the unpaid dues were brought up. I never said a word to my brother about it. I didn't need to. By Friday, he'd lost it. He showed up at my place. No Cody this time, just him. His face was red. Not angry, panicked. He started yelling in the driveway, shouting that I was going too far, that this was just family stuff, that you don't destroy your own blood over a few mistakes. I didn't say anything until he stopped shouting. Then I asked him one question. When did you decide that helping you meant you? He didn't answer. He just stood there shaking his head like he didn't know how we got here. And maybe he didn't, but I did. I watched a family rely on me, laugh at me, then resent me for leaving. And in that moment, I realized I was never really one of them. I was their funding source. Nothing more. After my brother stormed out of my driveway, things went eerily quiet. No more texts, no emails, no passive-aggressive messages through my sister. For the first time in years, there was nothing tying me to their drama. And it should have felt peaceful, but something about it felt unfinished. Like I was waiting for a punchline that hadn't landed yet. A month passed then, too. One night, I was out at a bar with a friend from college. We were catching up, talking about nothing important when he asked me if I was still involved with that real estate side hustle, the upstate rentals. I told him I still had one property, but I'd cut ties with the rest. He gave me a weird look, then said, "Funny, I could have sworn I saw a listing under your brother's name." I froze. He pulled out his phone and showed me. It was a short-term rental listing on a niche site, a house upstate, same address as the one I'd taken full ownership of after the buyout, but the profile listed my brother as the property manager, and it was active. Photos, prices, bookings. I checked it myself when I got home. It was real. Somehow, he had found a way back in. I don't know if it was a key he never returned or a side deal he cut with the cleaning service, but he was renting it out under the table. Cash only, off books. Probably thought I'd never find out. I did, and I didn't confront him. Instead, I waited 3 weeks, tracked the listing's activity, saved screenshots of every booking. Then I made one final move. I showed up at the rental one weekend with a locksmith and a property manager. The guests inside had just checked out. I had the locks changed, cameras installed, and a notice placed on the door warning that any unauthorized entry would result in criminal charges. Then I waited. He came 2 days later. I watched him from my car as he tried to unlock the front door only to find his key useless. He banged on the door. Then he walked around the back. Then he saw the notice. He didn't call me, didn't text, just drove away. I haven't heard from him since. Cody, last I heard, moved to Phoenix to live with some girl he met online. She kicked him out a month later when she found out he lied about having a job. Now he's living in a shared apartment with 3 guys who all work night shifts and argue over who used whose shampoo. My brother and his wife sold their house. Quietly, moved to a smaller one outside the city. Less mortgage, less pride, less of everything. And me, I kept the rental, cleaned it up, made it something decent, profitable. But more importantly, I made a rule. No family discounts. No, just this once. No unspoken agreements. I still go to the occasional family thing. Birthdays, graduations. I bring a bottle, I eat the food, and I leave when I'm full. Nobody jokes anymore. Nobody laughs too loud. And every time I see them now, I wonder if they remember how it all changed over a single dinner and a single sentence. The night the sad uncle stopped buying love because they finally made him feel it. And that was the last gift I ever gave them. Update. It's been 8 days since I changed the locks and officially ended the last of the mess. I figured that was it. Story over. Nothing left to clean up. But life doesn't care about clean endings. Yesterday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail like I always do now. When I finally listened to it, I had to replay it twice to make sure I heard it right. It was Cody. His voice was weirdly calm. He said he was in town for a couple days and that he was wondering if we could meet for coffee. He said, "I just want to talk. No BS. I'm not asking for anything." I almost deleted the message, but something stopped me. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I wanted to see if the kid had actually changed or if this was just another performance. We met this morning. Neutral ground, small coffee shop with no history, no memories. I got there early. He came in alone, looking older somehow. Not just tired, humbled, like the arrogance had been worn out of him. Layer by layer, he sat down and got straight to it. He said he'd been wrong. He said what he said that night at dinner wasn't a joke. It was a test. A messed up, insecure attempt to feel superior for once. That he knew I'd always been the one holding the family up. And that made him feel small. So he tried to make me smaller. But what got me wasn't the apology. It was what he said after. He told me he'd recently found out that his mom had been secretly using my name, my credit, on a second rental application for Cody a year before the fallout. They had faked a cosigner signature using old paperwork from a lease I'd helped them with once. And when the rent fell behind, it had nearly tanked my credit. I had no idea, never saw it, never got a notice. He found out about it 2 weeks ago when he tried to apply for a car loan and the bank flagged it. His mother never told him. He said, "You think you were just the wallet, but it was worse than that. You were the foundation and we built a whole mess on top of you." He left after that. Didn't ask for money. Didn't cry. Just said he wanted me to know the truth. I checked the claim later that afternoon. He wasn't lying. I contacted the property management company. There it was. My name, fake signature, old documentation reused. This being handled now legally, quietly. But that was the final straw. Not the joke, not the money, not even the betrayal. It was the silence. The assumption that I'd never find out. That I'd never matter enough to notice. Now I do. So here it is. The end of this entire story is simple. They don't get another chance. Not a year from now. Not at a funeral. Not when one of them hits rock bottom and remembers I exist. I've built something on my own and I'm gonna keep it that way. No more dinners. No more. Just this once. And if they ever tell the story of the uncle who walked away, I hope they remember this. I didn't walk away from them. They just never realized I was the only one still standing.